of the Titanic parable is of arrogance, of hubris, of the sense that we're too big to fail.
Veering to port with 22 knots, sideswipes the iceberg. Murdoch ports around the iceberg, try to keep from hitting the propellers. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now we're watching in accelerated time. We see the first 5 compartments flood. They equalize pretty quickly. Bows pulled down. We see the port list. Port list looks right. That looks like about 9 degrees. Well, you can really see the effect of that list on the flooding. So yeah, superstructure starts to get pulled under. Funnels collapse at their base. Now the bow's accelerating downward. That looks good. We're starting to see the stern come up. We got our maximum peak stress, and yeah, boom, boom, brakes. Okay, bow swinging down. That looks good. The double keel hang on, and then they separate. Bow plunges straight down. All right, we got mast snapping back.
Everybody always talks about how it's planing forward. Yeah, it's planing forward, but if you looked at this, you'd just say it was falling. Yes, it's planing forward, and that accounts for its displacement, but it's 1 forward and 6 down, so it's basic. That's it, man. That's exactly the way I always pictured it. So the stern is actually only a few lengths behind.
Yeah.
The funnels are ripping backwards, pulling off all the davits. Bow's going down like a torpedo. Here's the angle when it falls through into a stable position. Let's see the stern. Heeling way over to port. That looks right. And she goes, yep, that's right. She goes almost vertical just when she goes under, and then boom, implodes. Now she accelerates, and all the stuff starts to rip off. See the shell plating going. There goes the double bottom frisbeeing off. And the stern's falling through. So now the stern's falling aft end down. And we see the spiraling. Here comes the bow. Bow is falling in a stable position, and it hits. Yeah, boom. It kind of breaks its back, and we see the hydraulic outburst and the downblast effect. Let's see the stern. We see the shell plating blowing off, decks, everything kind of settling around it. Looks like a big airplane crash site. Bada bing, bada boom. That's exactly what we're looking for. Here we find the bow and stern sections 600 meters apart. We find the ship's boilers clustered east of the stern. Cargo cranes sheared from the deck. Broken pieces of funnel. Ground up shell plating. Sections of the ship's keel or double bottom. Its open end is ragged. It's not a clean break. At first glance, it appears the farthest object north, but there's the #1 cargo hatch, and that's 80 meters forward of the bow. And the hatch bolts are all severed. So what did that? And how did the bow break from the stern? What did this? The stern points south, facing the opposite direction of the bow. It looks like a bomb hit it. To the east of the stern lie 5 boilers from Boiler Room 1, the midsection of the ship. I think the location of these boilers is our first lead. We can account for many objects on our debris field map and explain how they traveled from the breakup at the surface to end their life 4 kilometers down at the bottom. But not every part can be so easily explained. Either at the moment of initial impact or at the moment that the ship slams down, the hydraulic forces inside the ship are enough to blow this hatch off. So you've got some internal overpressure here that's hydraulic. And over the large area of that #1 hatch, it just breaks every bolt at the same time. The hatch doesn't peel off sequentially. It's an evenly distributed overpressure. It just breaks every bolt head simultaneously. What caused this hydraulic outburst? Are we missing something? So you've got this big wreck coming down through the water column, and it's pulling water down with it, and it's been moving for miles, literally at 25 miles an hour, pulling along this wake behind it, just like the wake behind a race car that another race car can get into and kind of draft. So there's all this moving water, big column of water. Ship hits the bottom, stops suddenly. The column of water does not stop. It comes down on top of the ship, pancakes down the roof, crushes down the decks.
And if something held on, it might have been packed up against the face of it or flat back against the underside. And it took a while for that to exercise.
Why were those
all
cranes
the
there? Where did they come from? Did they originate from the poop deck? Did they originate from the well deck or the A deck? Once we apply our forensic process, Titanic's remains in the debris field begin to tell the story of what happened on that night, April 14th, 1912. So far, our theory of how the wreck traveled through the water column and what happened at impact fits the evidence, except for 3 outliers. How did these 2 pieces of double bottom and a pile of deckhouse debris from beneath the 3rd funnel end up far from the rest of the wreck? There are 3 pieces of the wreck whose placement on the debris field map don't make sense. They're outliers. They're enigmas because they're strangely out to the east of the hypocenter. We know from a past expedition that these 2, out of the 3, are pieces of Titanic's double bottom. We know these parts are from the same section of keel because their ragged ends align like 2 pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. How did these 2 chunks of keel detach from the bottom of the ship and end up to the east of the hypocenter? And what about the 3rd outlier? How did this chunk from beneath the 3rd funnel deckhouse end up way out there? Something like this. The pieces of double bottom keel begin life together, and on the journey down, exercised apart, planning a way like an aircraft wing to where we find them today, out in the debris field.